There will never be another Crosby, Stills and Nash record or show. Right now, I don't want anything to do with Crosby at all. It's just that simple. With these brutal words in 2016, Graham Nash dropped a bomb on classic rock history. After 47 years, one of music's most influential supergroups was finished. Not on hiatus, not taking a break, done forever. What could drive such venom between men who created some of the most beautiful harmonies ever recorded, men who once stood shoulder to shoulder at Woodstock and sold an estimated 70 million albums? The answer lies buried beneath 5 decades of million-dollar betrayals, sabotaged master tapes, cocaine-fueled power struggles, and financial disasters that turned musical brothers into bitter enemies. 3 voices that blended like magic on stage, spent their off-stage lives tearing each other apart. For every gorgeous melody came a knife in the back. For every platinum album, another burned bridge. This is the story of how rock's most promising supergroup imploded in what might be arguably one of the longest, most expensive band breakups in music history. Late 1968. Laurel Canyon, California. 3 rock refugees with nowhere else to go. David Crosby, freshly fired from the Byrds after insulting his bandmates and ranting about conspiracy theories on stage at Monterey Pop. Stephen Stills, watching his band Buffalo Springfield disintegrate after just 2 years of success. Graham Nash, suffocating in the Hollies as they rejected his more experimental songs. Inside Joni Mitchell's living room, Nash heard Stills and Crosby perform You Don't Have to Cry. He asked them to play it again, and again. Then, Nash joined in with a perfect third harmony. The room fell silent. Even they couldn't believe what they'd just created. It was an out-of-body experience, Nash later recalled. Like we'd discovered fire. Within 9 months, their debut album Crosby, Stills and Nash exploded onto the charts. Released May 29, 1969, it sold over 4 million copies and produced instant classics like Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. They performed their second-ever live show as a trio at Woodstock, telling the crowd of 400,000 they were scared shitless. Their vocal blend was unlike anything in rock. Crosby's otherworldly middle range, Stills' bluesy intensity, and Nash's soaring tenor, creating something greater than its parts. But offstage, their clashing egos emerged immediately. During album recording, Stills reportedly re-recorded many of Nash and Crosby's instrumental parts while they were away. When Neil Young joined in late 1969, adding a 4th ego to the mix, their commercial success soared with Deja Vu, selling over 7 million copies in the US alone. So did their conflicts. The 1970 CSNY tour wasn't just a disaster, it was a masterclass in self-sabotage. It imploded before it even began. Days before the first show, Stephen Stills reportedly summoned bassist Greg Reeves to his hotel room. When Reeves mentioned wanting to include some of his own songs in the set, Stills fired him on the spot, calling his songwriting ambitions ludicrous. The bloodbath continued. After their very first performance at Denver Coliseum on May 12, drummer Dallas Taylor was axed. His alleged crimes, tempo issues during Young's songs, and allegedly flirting with Neil Young's wife, Susan Aceveda. 2 musicians gone within 24 hours of the tour's start. Backstage became a battlefield. The band traveled on separate planes and stayed on different hotel floors. Stills' reportedly excessive alcohol and cocaine consumption reached frightening levels, fueling manic behavior that horrified his bandmates. During their Fillmore East performances, Stills hijacked the show with a 30-minute solo set that wasn't on the set list. Crosby, Nash, and Young stood backstage, watching helplessly as he rambled through unrehearsed material. The breaking point came during 2 July nights at Chicago's Auditorium Theater. In an emergency meeting, Crosby, Nash, and Young voted to fire Stills for what they called his rampant megalomania. Though they briefly reinstated him, the damage was irreversible. CSNY officially collapsed after their final show in Bloomington, Minnesota on July 9, 1970. Just 4 months after releasing Deja Vu. The implosion potentially cost them millions in touring revenue at their commercial peak. The band that had harmonized so perfectly on stage couldn't last 23 shows without self-destructing. By summer 1974, CSNY had convinced themselves money could fix everything. Their reunion tour promised to be a gold rush, record-breaking stadium shows across America and Europe. The numbers were staggering. The tour reportedly grossed $11 million, about $63 million today, making it one of rock's most lucrative tours ever. But when the final accounting came in, each member reportedly received less than $500,000, according to Nash. Let that sink in. More than $9 million, 82% of their earnings, vanished. Where did it go? Into the most expensive therapy sessions in rock history. The band members couldn't stand each other, so they flew on 4 separate private jets between shows. Price tag, $175,000 per week. They allegedly refused to stay on the same hotel floors, booking entire levels to maintain distance. Cost, $25,000 per night. Their bloated entourage included personal chefs, individual security teams, and separate road crews. Each member traveled with their own camp, like rival medieval lords. On stage, the dysfunction continued at top volume. Stills and Young demanded their own cranked-up monitor systems, creating a wall of competing sound. Crosby reportedly called it sonic hell, where he couldn't even hear himself sing. "We reached the height of excess," Nash later admitted. "We were spending money we didn't have to create an illusion of unity that didn't exist." Their historic Wembley Stadium show helped pioneer stadium rock in the UK. But backstage, the Doom Tour was a financial bloodbath. The most expensive band therapy that never worked. What happened in Miami's Criteria Studios in 1976 wasn't just unprofessional. It was unprecedented in rock history. CSNY had gathered to record a new album. Crosby and Nash spent days laying down intricate vocal harmonies on multiple tracks. They left for a short break, believing their contributions were safely recorded. Then came the betrayal. While they were gone, Stills and Young did something unthinkable. According to band accounts, they walked into the studio, pulled out the master tapes, and deliberately erased every single vocal track that Crosby and Nash had recorded. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a technical glitch. It was calculated musical sabotage. "We came back to find our voices literally wiped from existence," Nash later recalled. "I couldn't believe they would go that far." The project was quickly rebranded as Long May You Run by the Stills Young Band, released in July 1976, with no trace of Crosby or Nash's contributions. The cocaine-fueled paranoia that had infected their circle had reached its logical conclusion: the physical destruction of their collaboration. The financial damage was significant. Not just one album lost, but the collapse of future tours, recordings, and opportunities that might have generated millions. The betrayal didn't even benefit the perpetrators. 2 months into the Stills Young tour, Neil abruptly quit, sending Stills a mocking telegram. "Dear Stephen, funny how some things that start spontaneously end that way. Eat a peach, Neil." The erasure became legendary in music circles, perhaps the most extreme example of how personal animosity could literally destroy art. The most surprising thing about CSN wasn't their breakups. It was their stubborn refusal to stay broken. In 1977, when most bands would have been finished, Crosby, Stills, and Nash somehow reunited to record their second album, CSN. No one expected it to succeed. It went multi-platinum and hit number 2 on Billboard. Perhaps more impressive was the critical response. Rolling Stone called it a triumphant return, praising songs like Just a Song Before I Go, which became their highest-charting single ever, reaching number 7. But beneath this success lurked a deepening darkness. Crosby reportedly consumed over $1,000 worth of cocaine daily by 1981. During sessions, he'd disappear for hours, returning with bloody nostrils and increasingly erratic behavior. "I would find him huddled in the corner of the studio bathroom, completely paranoid," an engineer later revealed. He thought the microphones were government listening devices. Their 1982 album Daylight Again reflected their struggles. Crosby was so incapacitated that the project began as a Stills-Nash album. Studio sessions became nightmares of missed cues and forgotten lyrics. Atlantic Records executives stepped in, insisting Crosby appear on the album to maintain the valuable CSN brand. His vocals were often cobbled together from multiple takes or recorded during rare lucid moments. The band that once created immaculate three-part harmonies in single takes now needed studio technology to simulate basic competence. Yet somehow, they still sold out arenas, their audience fiercely loyal despite the evident decline. For 47 years, CSN always managed to reunite, no matter how bitter their feuds. Until 2016, when something finally broke for good. In March 2016, Graham Nash, the eternal peacemaker, announced that Crosby, Stills and Nash was permanently dead. His interview with Billboard magazine stunned the music world, not just for what he said, but how he said it. "I don't want anything to do with Crosby at all, it's just that simple," Nash declared. What could possibly push Nash, who had endured decades of drama, past his breaking point? The specific trigger remained private, but Nash described receiving nasty emails and personal attacks from Crosby that crossed unforgivable lines. "I've saved his fucking ass for 45 years, Nash later told a Dutch magazine, "and he treated me like shit." Crosby had already torched his relationship with Neil Young by publicly insulting Young's girlfriend, actress Daryl Hannah, calling her a purely poisonous predator in 2014. Young, furious at this violation, declared he would never work with Crosby again. The final nail reportedly came during a December 2015 Christmas performance at the White House. Backstage, witnesses described a heated confrontation between Crosby and Nash that nearly became physical. What began in Joni Mitchell's living room with perfect harmony ended in the White House with barely contained fury. When millions of dollars are at stake, most bands find a way to get along, Nash acknowledged. But there are limits to what money can fix. After surviving drug addiction, master tape erasures, financial disasters, and countless betrayals, CSN had finally found the breaking point from which there was no return. On January 19, 2023, David Crosby died at age 81. The news sent shockwaves through the music world, but one response was particularly telling: Graham Nash's silence. For days, nothing. No statement, no social media post. The silence spoke volumes about wounds too deep to heal even in death. When Nash finally released a statement, it acknowledged their musical legacy, but offered no hints of personal reconciliation. What died with Crosby wasn't just a legendary voice, but any possibility of healing rock's longest-running feud. Just months earlier, in 2022, Nash had remained bitter. "I've saved his fucking ass for 45 years and he treated me like shit." Their musical accomplishments stand undisputed. Their catalog is estimated to have sold over 70 million albums. Their vocal approach influenced everyone from Fleet Foxes to the Eagles. Songs like Ohio became the soundtrack for a generation's political awakening, written and recorded by CSNY in just 24 hours after the Kent State shootings. Financially, they built substantial wealth despite their mismanagement. At the time of Crosby's death, estimates placed his net worth at approximately $10 million, with Nash and Stills each reportedly worth around $30 million. But those numbers hint at what could have been. With fewer conflicts and better business decisions, their earnings might have rivaled rock's biggest acts. In 2006, they were honored as BMI icons for their unique and indelible influence on music. The irony was painful. Three men who could no longer share a dressing room being celebrated for their harmony. "We created something more valuable than any of us," Crosby admitted in one of his final interviews. "And I broke it. I let it slip through my fingers." A fitting epitaph for a collaboration that created some of rock's most beautiful music through some of its ugliest personal conflicts. The story of Crosby, Stills and Nash presents a painful paradox. How could voices that blended so perfectly on Helplessly Hoping belong to men who couldn't speak to each other off stage? How could the band that sang about getting ourselves back to the garden spend 50 years tearing each other apart? Their journey took them from the heights of Woodstock in 1969 to bitter silence in 2023, from selling an estimated 20 million albums to reportedly erasing each other's contributions from master tapes. From revolutionizing vocal harmony to communicating only through lawyers. The financial consequences of their dysfunction are significant. The premature end to their 1970 tour, the estimated $9 million squandered on the Doom tour, the lost albums and tours that never happened, the legal fees from decades of disputes. Together, these losses potentially exceeded $50 million in today's dollars. Yet what's most disheartening isn't the money lost, but the music that was never created. How many more classics might have emerged if they'd managed their conflicts differently? How much richer might their legacy be? We were damaged people damaging each other, Nash once reflected. We created magic together and then did everything possible to destroy it. That's the ultimate lesson of CSN. Creative brilliance alone isn't enough. Even the most perfect harmony can't survive when everything else is discord. Did you witness CSN in concert during any era, from their early Woodstock era peak to their later struggling years?